Hi folks, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Now, if you're using a large language model to perform some kind of a reasoning task and it gets it wrong, what do you do next? The authors of this paper are proposing a very meta technique, and that is to actually use the LLM itself to reflect on its own mistakes and remember them, and use that memory and knowledge to improve its subsequent answers. And this very much mimics what humans do when they're trying to solve a problem. They go through a process of trial and error, and in each step, they learn something new that enables them to do better the next time around. Let's look at a concrete example before we get into some of the benchmark results and architecture. This is an example from a benchmark called Alf's World, and it consists of a bunch of physical reasoning tasks. These tasks typically describe some kind of a physical setup. In this case, there's a room with a bed, a desk, drawers, a garbage can, and so on, a room with objects in it. And the task is to examine the mug with the desk lamp. So you have to figure out how to get the mug, how to take it to the desk lamp, and so on. And here we see that the LLM falls into a loop where it can't make any forward progress. And then when we ask the LLM to reflect on what went wrong, it is able to figure this out. I should have looked for the desk lamp first, then looked for the mug. And it says what it will do differently in the next trial. And so this is the kind of setup where the LLM is able to look at its trace of reasoning and correct itself, and then execute a new sequence that tries to rectify that mistake. And let's peel back one more layer of abstraction. How was the LLM able to do that? And it was set up with a few shot prompt. And in the appendix of this paper, they describe the full verbose prompt, and you'll see how in this prompt we're setting up the LLM to do this kind of self-introspection and reflection to look for mistakes. And we give it a few shot example. We give it one example where it fails, and we give it an example of how it could have prevented that failure. And this few shot example continues with one more example. So this few shot prompt has two examples in it. And then you append to this prompt the actual Alf's World scenario you want to solve and continue from there. And this chart summarizes their results. On the x-axis, you see how many trials the LLM performed. So how many times did it find a mistake, correct itself, and then make another attempt. And on the y-axis, you see its success rate of all the questions in the Alf's World benchmark. And you can see these two lines at the top over here. The red line is success without reflection. The blue line is success with reflection. And you see a pretty big gap. The red line stops because after the 8th trial, there was no more improvement. Whereas with reflection, you can see that it does continue to make improvements all the way until the 12th iteration, where it is north of 95%. Similarly, here at the bottom, they're plotting the failure rates with some scenarios like hallucination or bad planning. And again, you'll see that it kept improving, which is to say the failure rate kept decreasing all the way up to the 12th iteration. So you can see clearly by the gap between these lines that the act of reflecting is improving the success rate drastically on these tasks. They tried it with another benchmark called Hotpot QA, which is a question and answer benchmark, which looks at how an LLM could reach out to something like Wikipedia to get answers to questions. And here again, you see the blue line is the success rate with reflection, where it keeps showing improvements on successive trials. And there's a pretty large gap between these two lines with reflection and without reflection. So that was a quick look at a very meta way to improve the reasoning performance of LLMs. I hope you enjoyed that. And folks, if you're enjoying these videos, please like and subscribe. My analytics tell me that only a small fraction of everyone watching is subscribed, so please subscribe. It helps out the channel. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.